Corporate Social Responsibility Unit 5. Management areas. There's a total of 10 areas in the management of CSR that we will explain below. It is important to note that each company is different, so each management area will have its own characteristics. However, there is a whole series of values and principles that each entity must have and that should be governed by the responsible management of each area. Senior management in relations with shareholders. The application of CSR policies and management involves all of the areas that comprise it. Therefore, it implies adherence to the principles of good corporate governance, including in the securities and market legislation in the so-called Olivencia Code and the report of the Aldama Commission. These principles focus on the establishment of clear rules of corporate governance, which are independent of the most important committee of the board of directors. Total transparency communication directed towards the markets, compliance with regulations concerning the use of privileged information, and upholding the rights of small shareholders and their representatives. Corporate governance. The term refers to the way in which different companies organize, control, and direct. The main objective to this governance is to seek the satisfaction of both the shareholders and its stakeholders through constant dialogue and to establishment of relationships with all parties. It is about establishing relationship between economic value and social commitment. The aspects to which they highlighted in groups that are part of the corporate governance are the constitution of the board of directors. It can be constituted in different ways, degrees of involvement and requirements of the CSR principles that a company has. However, according to the indications included in the governance code of the sustainable company, the representation of all interested parties will be obtained through an appointment of an independent expert advisor in the field of CSR, including a representative of each of the stakeholders so that their needs can be met in the best possible way. Members of the council must be aware of and trained in social and environmental aspects of business activity. A delegated commission must be created. It is composed of external consultants or managers who are experts in the field of CSR and who are responsible for promoting, supervising, and evaluating the implementation of social strategies. The same code states that in order to achieve a correct functioning, the aforementioned consultants must meet regularly in order to be able to better deal with the topics and good practice and related to CSR. Marking improvements, objectives will be monitored. It should be noted that their work will be focused on both internal and external audiences, generating trust and social legitimacy, and the needs of the stakeholders and the corporate governance. The needs to be covered within the board of directors are as follows. The employees and the request for salaries and professional standards that are adequate, fair, and transparent. Shareholders expect the highest possible return on their investment, as well as transparent management and accuracy in the information provided, both financial and social. Clients want their needs to be met through the products and services offered by a company, thus creating a relationship of trust and loyalty. Suppliers demand a good performance of a company in order to establish strategic relationships based on trust and security. The community for trust and collaboration with those companies that are coherent with their social objectives, supporting certain projects, and the delegated commissions and CSR. Here we distinguish three types of committees. The Remuneration Committee and its main tasks are to assist in the supervision of these remuneration policies of the senior executives and managers and to monitor transparency in the selection process of senior management. This must work in a fair and consistent manner, which will be well regarded by employees and other stakeholders. The Audit Commission is responsible for examining the accounting verification system, monitoring the impartiality of the external auditor, and the interests and the internal control system. The Compliance Commission, it monitors that the action protocols established by the government system are met in a correct manner, thus guaranteeing all interested parties compliance with the rules of action. The government codes. We define government codes as those reports that are made up of a series of concrete recommendations and voluntary compliance by the company. These recommendations tend to be on how to improve the transparency of information as well as composition and work of the governing body related to the different interest groups. Internationally, we highlight the following codes. The Calburu Code, the report, the Hampel report, the OECD report, the Winter report. As for Spain, there are two reference codes, the Olivencia report and the Aldama report, derived from the transparency laws passed on July 2003. Let's see what the OECD code, which we already have introduced previously, consists of. The OECD report. This report intends to guarantee that the different actions carried out by the company are in accordance with public policy. In this way, their guidelines encourage the companies to carry out their activities, taking into account the specific characteristics of the country in which they are located, in addition to complying with the principles of good sustainable government in any place where their activities is carried out. The most relevant aspects of highlights of this code are the general principles that the company must comply with. Each company must comply with the regulations in force in the country which it resides. However, the OECD establishes general principles that all companies must take into account and comply with when executing their activities. These principles are basically focused on achieving a business climate and an excellent relationship and communication, both the internal and external public of a company and or organization. Among these, we can emphasize the promotion of economic, social, and environmental progress, respect for human rights, cooperation with the local community, encouraging the formation of human capital, establishing a relationship of trust with the local community in which a company exercises its activities, and maintaining active communications with employees and other public, among others. Publication of information, the communication, both internal and external, is very important to achieve a climate of trust. Therefore, the information provided by a company must accurately reflect, regularly, fully, and relevantly reflect the activities it carries out, its structure, financial situation, results, objectives, and achievements. Employment and labor relations. These principles refer to the creation of an optimal working environment for its workers. They deal with the aspects such as respect for the workers' labor rights, contribution of abolishing child labor, and elimination of any type of forced or compulsory labor, non-discrimination of workers based on race, sex, religion, or political opinion, informing workers and their representatives about the situation of a company, and encouraging cooperation among them. And the environment. It is very important. The company takes into consideration the agreement's principles, objectives, and international standards related to the environment. When performing their business activity, a company or an organization must establish and maintain an adequate environmental management system, provide information to citizens and workers about the environmental effects caused by their activities, develop communication activities with concerned communities in order to improve the situation, evaluate and take into account its environmental impact, maintain plans in order to prevent this impact, try to improve environmental results, provide environmental training to its employees, and contribute to the development of a public policy focused on improvement and care of the environment. And the fight against corruption. The company must ensure that the remuneration of the representatives is appropriate and corresponds only to legitimate services, reporting about these operations whenever appropriate. It also focuses on improving the transparency of their activities as a demonstration of the fight against corruption and extortion, and to inform its employees, workers about the policies that are being carried out on this field with the same company. In addition, the company should not offer to pay officials or employees of business partners, should not use subcontractors, purchase orders, consulting contracts as a means to channel payments to officials, employees of business partners, or their family members or business partners. Illicit contributions should not be made to candidates or public officials, yes, or to political parties or other organizations of a political nature. Consumer interest. The relationship with consumers is very important. Therefore, the company must follow fair commercial, marketing, and advertising practices. In addition, these necessary measures must be taken to guarantee the safety and quality of the goods and services they provide. A company must ensure that its goods and services comply with health and safety regulations. It must also provide accurate and clear information about its products or services, establish a communication channel with its consumers in order to know their opinion, degree of satisfaction, and suggestions to improve, as well as collaborate transparently with the public authorities so as to prevent or eliminate the danger that their products or services may cause. In addition, a company must never make statements or participate in practices that may be deceptive, misleading, fraudulent, or unfair. Science and technology. A company should contribute to the development of local and national innovative capacity, adopt practices that allow the transfer of technologies, carry out scientific and technological development work, and develop collaboration links with universities and public institutions in order to carry out the research projects. Competition. As far as the competition is concerned, the existing rules and regulations must be respected at all times. Companies must avoid entering into or concluding agreements between anti-competitive competitors to set prices, make concerted efforts to establish production limits, and divide or subdivide the markets. In short, they must develop their activities in a legal manner. Taxation. It refers to the payment of taxes and fees established in the legal and regulatory dispositions of fiscal character and of all the countries in which they carry out their activities. Now we come to the employees. The second management area is the main asset of the companies, for which the CSR requires impartial and considerate treatment. The responsible management of employees and workers entails a commitment to promotion, non-discrimination, and merit, with the reconciliation of work and family life and a positive work environment, all added to make the constitutional, contractual, collective right of workers. It is important to note the workers should not be subjected to situations of unjustified pressure, harassment, or exclusion. In addition, there should never be discrimination based on gender, race, or any other reason, and the workers with disabilities should be accommodated. What should also be present is commitment to prevent and prosecute any form of abuse and harassment. Supplier, contractor, and subcontractor. In recent years, these factors have become gaining in importance in ethical matters because most companies supplying multinationals have their production areas in countries with less restrictive laws, which means that these companies often have forced labor, child labor, as well as very poor working conditions with regard to endless working hours. This makes the control of the supply chain one of the main axes of the CSR policy. This control will be more or less exhaustive depending on the size and sector of a company, but it must always be certified that the tasks carried out by suppliers respect the legislation of each country, and the international conventions do not violate basic human rights and child rights and comply with the ILO declarations. This control is also carried out in national suppliers, although verification of compliance with the regulation and working conditions is much easier. However, and according to real data reported from Forestia, only 11.3% of Spanish companies and organizations carry out environmental audits of their suppliers. Clients and consumers. In this area, respect for ethics in advertising and marketing used by the company, which is included in a series of codes of conduct and sectoral declarations, is vital. We must take into account those audiences that may be more susceptible, such as children, the elderly, and people with limited physical or mental capacities, for which the principles of quality, service, and protection are supported by specific legislation as part of the constant vigilance of the relevant civil organizations. Competition and marketing. In the current situation of fierce competition in the markets, ethical behavior is expected from all companies or organizations in order to avoid any kind of fraud arising from the use of privileged information or fictitious transactions, as well as corruption. Relationships with public administration and regulatory compliance. Regarding public administrations, a company should avoid two aspects: considering the authorities and legislation as impediments or enemies of a company, before which various strategies should be established, and considering them part of the business that must be managed to avoid problem and cost. If this is not avoided, the first consideration may lead to a regular breach of rules, while the second may encourage administrative corruption and confusion between the public and private sectors. A good CSR policy creates a relationship of trust and contribution with the administrators, and in turn, respect and good faith towards compliance with the rules. With these actions, companies manifest their willingness to behave as responsible citizens in society. Thus, corporate citizenship policies that comply with these guidelines must start by cooperating with the democratic public authorities. Close social environment. This includes all the communities directly affected by the company's actions. These are groups that may be more susceptible to suffer certain effects derived from business activities, such as pollution, oscillation of land prices, landslide deterioration, and health risks, among others. In addition, they can enjoy certain services or advantages that the business activity may bring, such as general economic development. We've seen how companies can affect the community both positively and negatively. Thus, the establishment of CSR policy will establish communication mechanisms with the affected communities, both to know and measure the impact, as well as to try to reduce and make up for it. It can be achieved through actions such as contracting local people, financing facilities for public use, or through agreements with the local entities. Natural environment. Currently, being aware of the ecological impact of the industrial and economic activities of the planet is considered a source of development, and that is why many CSR policies are directed towards this area. Problems such as global warming due to the emissions of greenhouse gases, the decrease of marine biological reserves, and the increase of ozone layer holes, among others. In order to alleviate these effects, it is necessary to set in motion the creation of economically sustainable developmental models in order to reduce the environmental deterioration. This new development model involves a large investment in technology, which requires that the company establish a whole process of research on new technologies, new energies, and new, more efficient production models, as well as implement appropriate corrective measures to avoid and reduce to a minimum the negative impact of your business may have on the environment. Some outstanding examples of this awareness can be found in associations or coalitions, such as World Business Council's Sustainable Development and Ceres Coalition of Environmentally Responsible Economics, and Club of Rome, among others.